Welcome to Polishing Profits by the Profitable Cleaner Network, hosted by Mark Anderson, Sharon Cowan CBSE, and Ed Selkow, seasoned cleaning business owners with over 140 years of success. Learn what works, skip the missteps, and build on proven success.
Welcome to another, let's see, what shall we call it? Exciting, thrilling, cliffhanger.
That's a stretch, Mark.
Yeah.
Thrilling is a stretch, buddy.
Yeah. Right.
Well,
That's a stretch.
I just like to ad lib, and some days I get caught like this. So rather than stretch it, welcome to Polishing Profits. We have Mr. Ed, and I did that intentionally. Ed, where did Mr. Ed come from? Quickly.
That was the talking horse.
Yeah. Oh, Wilbur. Yeah.
A horse is a horse, of course.
Of course. If you don't know what Mr. Ed is, we highly advise you look it up on YouTube. Sharon, I see you're ready to go.
So I'm in that. I remember that. Good show.
Mr. Ed.
I don't remember Wilbur, but I remember
Wilbur was his owner. He used to
You're right. Yeah, I don't. I can't think of his face. I don't remember who Wilbur was.
I can't either, but he was. Yeah. Anyway, all I remember is, "Hey, Wilbur." That's not a bad imitation.
Well, that was right around the time where My Favorite Martian was also
My
playing.
Mother the Car.
My Mother the Car. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mr.
speaking of,
What was it, Sharon?
Mr.
What,
Green
Sharon?
Jeans. I don't know what it was on, but Mr. Green Jeans was.
Mr. Green Jeans. Yeah.
Well, don't go back.
Working in
Soupy Sales. I bet you don't remember Soupy Sales. Maybe that was just a Detroit.
Oh God, I had his records. He put records out, and I had them.
Yeah. I don't know that I would admit to that, but that's okay. He was a Detroit hero.
Yep.
Was he from Detroit? Is that where he was from?
Yep.
Is that right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was a New York thing. Yeah, there was some stuff that was just New York, local people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So more than you ever wanted to know about things that don't actually exist. Just live long enough. Speaking of things that don't actually exist, let me get to today's topic. We've had guerrilla sales. We've had guerrilla marketing. So we got to thinking, no one talks about guerrilla management. So like the talking car, the talking horse, it's working outside of the bounds of physics or the things that we believe can get done. But that's what we need to look at when we're managing our companies and growing them. Things change fast. The landscape changes, the competition changes, the clients definitely change. And how do we keep our companies alive and fresh and do things that will help us have better productivity, keep our people longer and our customers longer? So we tag this guerrilla management, and that's what we're going to talk about. So Ed, you had a pretty good thing pre-roll here on guerrilla management. You want to give us an overview of what we're?
It's based on the idea that you use your greatest weaknesses against your enemy. So in the Revolutionary War, when the British were marching, in step, and the colonists are hiding behind trees. You know what I mean? I mean, they're just shooting. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. So that was one. There was an awful lot of most of what happened in Vietnam could be classified as guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, the Vietnamese approach to the war. Yeah.
Yeah, no, an example is, and I'll never forget this, but there was a fellow that told me, he said that they went and they won an area. They killed everybody. They won an area. And when they went back there was two guys chained to one machine gun in case one got shot.
So when we have problems, are we always approaching them the same way? And problems, challenges, threats, whatever you want to call them, we can't do things. There's the old saying, if you always do what you've always done, then you'll always get what you've always got.
Right.
And that statement's not true, because if you always do what you've always done, you're going to get less than what you've always got, because somebody's going to get around you and do better. So we're talking about the boundary shifting. Where do you keep your boundaries when you look at getting things done? Sharon, real quick on guerrilla management.
I think I can play off of what you just mentioned, because there's a phrase that has stuck with my mind throughout the time I had my business. If you do things today the way you did things yesterday, you won't be here tomorrow. So that kind of speaks to what we're talking about with guerrilla management, in that the owner's ability to adapt to change and to be willing to make the strategic changes within the business are key to your success. So if you do things today the way you did them yesterday, you won't be here tomorrow. So change is inevitable. You have to do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, my favorite one was that Blockbuster had there was an offer in for Netflix for $20 million, and they passed. And what they said was, the Blockbuster people said was, look, people like to get in their car and go down and pick their movies out, and I mean, instead of just laying in bed naked, and clicking through, I mean. But yeah, no, they could have had Netflix for 20 million bucks. Think about that.
Yep. So when we're approaching our management, let's give a couple of examples or thoughts about how to do that. How do we think differently? Are we looking at ways, this is a bit of an abstract subject, but the whole point of this is when you have major issues, don't approach them the same way you always did. Look at better ways to get things done. And how can you get them done in a way that basically reduces costs, improves margins are always one of the issues, and basically makes customers happy. We run into this stuff all the time. But when things aren't going well, when you can't keep people, when your customers are having problems and you can't get the issues resolved, these are the things that drive people nuts owning a business. You go out and you get the problem fixed and it comes back. You go out and get the problem fixed and a different one comes back. Well, you got to ask yourself, there's something wrong with what we're doing to fix the problem. So change, what you're doing. Don't keep doing what isn't getting you the best result. Look for something else. And you do need a team to do that.
Right.
Remember the logbooks? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sharon.
No, I was going to say, I have an example of that, in that early on in the business, when I had just taken over and we were in a growth mode, we were having continuous employee issues with no shows. It was before I had a timekeeping system in place. So we had no shows. We had quality issues. It was all coming down on me at one time. And I'm talking under a year in the business. Okay. So the first 6 to 8 months. So I made the decision, add a significant amount of well-trained people that I trained, paid much more money than the going rate to supervise the field crews. It wasn't something that my accountant thought very much of. In fact, he had a fit, messed up my financials for 6 months, but we needed to do it. We needed to stabilize the staff. We needed to stop the bleeding with the complaints, and getting some qualified people in there to oversee these crews allowed me the time to go on with the business, to stop that bleeding and go on with the business. It was not, if you read textbooks or went to seminars, it would not have been advice I would have been given by industry people. No, you can't afford to have all those supervisors. It's going to hurt your bottom line, blah, blah, blah. You don't need them. But I did need them. And I did a pivot, and I said, this can't go on. I need to be free to generate new business. I've got to get these problems in the field solved today. And so I went against everything, pivoted from what I was doing, and brought in that supervision. And it all worked out. It all helped. We grew from there. But it was a tough decision to make because it was a lot of money to bring these people in. Money I didn't necessarily have. So, but I had to find a way to get it and to do it, and it paid off. But if I hadn't made
basically,
that,
yeah, unconventional problem solving is one of the things of, like we were saying earlier, some of Ed's examples. The colonists did what the British weren't expecting. Well, you had to solve these problems. So you went out and you basically broke outside the boundaries and did what normally isn't getting done to get a
right,
problem solved and improve service and customer retention. And people weren't doing those sort of things. And I don't
right.
know if they're necessarily. We look at a lot of companies. And would you guys agree that majority companies are all organized the same way they usually have been in this industry?
Yes, I would agree.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if
What do
we
you
look
mean?
at an org chart, account manager, supervisor, the responsibilities, tasks, and authorities they give them.
Okay.
I don't think, at least the companies I've worked with, when we talk about things, we talk about being unconventional, in the problem solve. And one thing we did, I'll hitchhike off of Sharon's, it was somewhat similar. We pushed the decision making along with the training down to a lot of it to what we call the point of service or the point of contact, which who gets the work done every night, the bottom line, the supervisors and the employees, right? So we pushed as much decision making as we could and trained our supervisors to do. Our supervisors acted had a lot of training similar to an account manager, except they didn't go talk to the client. They were specifically operating those accounts and managing them to provide employee retention, training, and get the service that helps us keep the customer. So they were making a lot of decisions that were normally with higher level people. What we found, it's better to spend the money and put it down there at the point of service than try to find somebody that's very highly paid that winds up trying to get into that to get it fixed all the time, to get them to do the job that really needs to get done. So we had more lower paid people in what you call our cost of goods sold, but they were trained differently. And then that allowed what we called our general managers that ran whole areas. They ran the whole book of business to operate better and more efficiently. And they focused on the customer, on upsell, cross-sell, on making sure and working with the supervisor or the assistant project manager, whatever you wanted to call them, and how we got things done. So we had a real division of labor. That's why we kept the clients a long time. And that's why we kept our employees at a longer length and retained them longer than most other people, because they had the attention they needed. So we shifted. We went outside the traditional boundaries, and we used empowerment and autonomy. We allowed people to make decisions at lower levels, and we train them to do that. And it takes finding the right people. And then again, unconventional problem solving. So that's a bit. We had a very flat organization doing that. Now, did I spend more money on supervision? Yeah. Did I spend less money on account management? Probably not, because hiring good helps. If you're going to hire a GM or an account manager level, you have to make the market rate, or you're not going to get quality people. That's pretty simple. But what they were able to do, they could manage a much wider span of control because the people were better trained and spend more time with the customer. So we got the problems corrected faster, which made the customers happy. And as we worked through this, what happened? We started retaining customers longer because they had a lot more faith, confidence. We had predictable, consistent service. And that allowed us to stay in the account longer and build the relationship. So that's a bit of real quick, my sense of the guerrilla marketing. See, Jay Levinson ruined me, Ed. The guerrilla marketing, that cover of that book will always be on my mind.
Yeah.
But guerrilla management. So that's a bit of what we did. Ed, thoughts?
It's just, looking at a problem and seeing a number of options to solve it. Okay. And then picking one, example, the one you're just talking about, the employees. Well, that was the beauty of, starting companies and selling them. Okay. Because when I got to the fourth one, it was like, wait a minute. You know what? Getting employees is just as important as getting clients. It's the same. It's not different. It's not an afterthought. And so what I did was I made arrangements where we didn't have to advertise any positions ever because I was working with social service agencies, and that was actually a competitive advantage. Okay, you get one of these folks from one of these social services, and number one, they always show up. There's no calling out. They just don't do that. They're very, very serious about the individual tasks that are necessarily done. I'll never forget. I had somebody call me at 11 o'clock at night, and it was a day porter, and he was concerned because there was a spot on a faucet up on the third floor that he just couldn't get off. He's just been, and I mean, it was a really, really, really big deal as far as he was concerned, but he cared.
Yeah.
He cared. Okay. He's sitting at home hours after work, and he's thinking about, a problem inside the building. There was quite a bit of that. I was not happy with I was never happy with the employment thing here in Florida. Because what we have here is we have, everybody that gets in trouble, everybody that goes broke, they go to Florida. And so we wound up with this wonderful. We've got this wonderful selection of winos.
That's because you can sleep on the beach all night. You don't need a house.
It was but I mean, it was just awful, and I couldn't figure it out. But I mean, I did eventually figure it out after I sold 3 companies.
So we're just at the end of this. We just wanted to get everybody. The whole goal here was to get you to think about doing things differently, coming at things to improve your company's performance, the service delivery to the customer, and your employees' engagement with the company. So I'm going to pull a political stunt here and pull up my teleprompter, and we'll go over real quickly. We did some talking about guerrilla management. So I'm going to give you 5 points to wrap up very quickly. And generally, the philosophy behind guerrilla management is to embrace flexibility, creativity, and a willingness to challenge the norms. Like Ed started out in the beginning. The colonists didn't fight like the English. Why is that? Because the colonists were fighting the English, and the English didn't fight like the colonists. So we had this progression of moving out of the boundaries and doing things differently. And it worked. At least so far, it's worked 250 years. So 5 points, adaptive leadership. That's a leadership style that encourages a culture of innovation and resilience within your company. Point 2, empowerment and autonomy. I talked about that, Sharon did, and Ed's talked about it somewhat. It fosters a sense of accountability and drives higher levels of engagement and productivity at lower levels in the organization. When people know they're supported to act, they will take action. And if they know that they are rewarded, whether it's money, promotions, whatever your reward system is, empower and give people autonomy to act at the point of service, which is, hey, the front line controls the bottom line. Go ahead and Google that particular saying. You'll find a lot of interesting things. But it gets beat up, but we don't always spend enough time with the bottom line where the work gets done and determines what kind of tomorrow we're going to have on the phone. Dynamic and real-time performance metrics. I'm not going to go into that, except if your metrics, if you know what you're looking at with complaints, inspections, people, training, if you know what these metrics are, it allows for quick adjustments and continuous improvement. So you can respond quickly to challenges. Somebody calls up and says, if you don't fix this, I'm throwing you out. Or you don't get rid of that manager. A manager walks out. What do you do? And we all face that. Unconventional problem solving. Sharon shared that with her. Gosh, excuse me. But the focus is on finding innovative solutions. Don't always do what you've always done, because you won't always get what you've always got.
How fast can you remove that turd from the lobby?
Yes, I have a day porter in the area. Let me page him. And finally, agile and decentralized. And this kind of flips back up to our other point about empowerment and autonomy. And agile and decentralized decision making. Give people the opportunity to make decisions, train them. Just don't give them the authority. Train them. Get the problem solved at the lowest level possible, and you'll have fewer high-level problems.
Right.
And finally, 6 is focus on results and outcomes. So, the result-driven effort ensures that all efforts are aligned with your strategic goals and objectives. So what do we want? Begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey said, and 100 other people that are motivational. And be resilient and flexible. Don't get stuck in the mud. Get your wheels out of the mud and do some different things. And you don't always have to be in trouble. It doesn't always have to be an emergency. How about just reducing your cost, producing more for less, and being able to pay more to your people and put more on your bottom line? So, really be resilient and flexible. And I think I cheated. I went out and worked on this a bit, but basically it's from the conversations the three of us had had. And so that would be our definition of the 7 points of guerrilla management. I might have said 5 earlier. If I did, forgive me. I was having a moment. But
what was number 2? What was point number 2, Mark? Run that again.
Empowerment and autonomy.
Yeah, there was, and I'm not sure where I read it, but it talked about a management structure that was, as you said earlier, that was flat. And the illustration was, look at the Catholic Church. There's billions of Catholics, and they operate on 3 levels of management. Billions of people are managed that way. Billions.
And empowerment and autonomy requires some thinking. And it also requires training. If you're going to allow supervisors to do things that may actually fall into a traditional role of an account manager, then you have to, 1, train them to do those things, and you have to pay them to do those things. Mm-hmm. But when you get that off their plate, then the account managers or GMs can do things that are a lot more important, like seeing the client, building the business with your current work, adding to your current work.
I lost it. I don't have it.
So without any explanation, we'll go through the 6. Sharon, do you have anything before I read down and we sign off?
No, I think just having the flexibility to make a change when things are not going the way you want them to go, making a change and not continuing to do the same thing you've always done just because you've always done it that way.
Yep. So we'll wrap up with the points all together. So 1's adaptive leadership, 2 is empowerment and autonomy to your team, 3 is dynamic and real-time performance metrics. And by dynamic and real-time, that doesn't mean you have 10,000 KPIs. I won't get into that, or OKRs. They've got to be short, direct, and focus on key outcomes. People can only manage 5 to 7 of these. You get beyond that, it gets too convoluted. So they've got to be dynamic. And part of that dynamic is getting it down to the outcome. Unconventional problem solving. 5 was agile and decentralize your decision making. That allows you to do other things, or your top people to do other things. And focus on results and outcomes. We can see how that ties in. And finally, be resilient and flexible. Don't be rigid and stiff, and keep yourself in good shape to make these decisions. So when the time comes, you can run the race, to use a term.
Some of that's a personality thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, it's not a something that you can get better at Harvard. It's not. That's not what it is.
No, Harvard can't teach you this. Harvard School of Business, Cornell, we can go to. They don't teach you all of this. They might give you the concepts, but you're right. A lot of it's inherent. And I'll go back to number 1. A lot of it is the business owner's ability and desire to have adaptive leadership. Will I change? Am I always looking for ways to improve? And I don't know if we are born with that. But after you run a business for so long and you solve enough problems, most founders and owners of small companies become very good at being adaptive and flexible.
Well, One of my things was that when supervisors or managers came in, one of the things that I would say all the time is, look, unlike any place else that you have ever been, you have a mistake quotient to me. People that aren't making mistakes aren't doing anything.
Yep.
So here's the criteria for a mistake. And so I outlined it. And what it did was it took the fear away. They weren't afraid of, there had to be you had to do something really to get thrown out.
Well, that's a good point, Ed, because when you delegate and you put those authorities down to lower levels, people have to have the thought in their head that I'm supported when I make this decision, right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't have that, they'll quit making the decision. So you can't always punish them. You look forward to how to improve. But that's a really good point on as you're. We used to call pushing it the responsibility and outcomes down to the lowest level, the lowest service level possible, because that's where things really happen.
Mm-hmm.
But they have to be trained, and they have to know that if I make a mistake, they can't have the fear of failure. That's the word I was looking for. They can't have a fear of failure because they won't make the decision, even if they're trained to. But if they know, okay, well, this might not come out the way I want it to, but I'm going to make it, that's how they grow their decision-making muscle as well. And then you get back in and retrain. So I think that's a very valid point.
I left after I sold the company. I worked for a great big company, and one of their things was to never actually do anything. My first day, the toner cartridge for the printer ran out, and we're in an area. We're in a very commercial industrial area where that's not going to be a problem. And what I got though was. Well, we can't make that decision. The branch manager couldn't make the decision to get a toner cartridge, And I says, well, what about this regional guy, And he says, oh no, And I says, what about the vice president? And the answer I got was, he's not going to stick his neck out,
Yeah.
He's not going to stick his head out. Yeah, no, but I mean, it was amazing the how frozen they were, and it was that's all it was fear. I'm going to get fired.
And people have to be comfortable making decisions, and when you make a decision, you have two options. It's going to be right or wrong, and sometimes even the founders and owners don't know. You make your best shot at what you think the target is. Well, Sharon, you want to close this up and out of here for today, and we'll call it good. And hopefully the audience has gotten a lot of things out of this discussion. And again, these are ideas for you to chew on, to work on, make a couple notes, find one good thing and try it.
Yeah.
Anyway, you want to take us out? I guess that's a bad word, take us out.
Yeah, it's a matter of thinking about your business, about not being frozen, is a good term, or handicapped in terms of making difficult decisions about changing your standard operating procedures. It might be on one issue, it might be several issues, but having the flexibility in your brain to say, this isn't working, I'm not going to keep repeating it because it's not going to change the result. If I want a different result, I have to try something different. And at the very minimum, you try something different. Might not work, it might work beautifully, but you don't know what you don't know. So be flexible, be open to new ideas, be open to changing and getting your problem solved.
Well, that brings us to the end. Remember, we can be found on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and all the places where other fine, great podcasts go home to live and not die. So anyway, Thank you for watching Polishing Profits. We will talk to you next time. Everybody take care. Adios.